Tom Amos. Welcome to the Arrive&Thrive Career Podcast, mate. How are you?
I'm very good. Thanks for having me.
Oh, mate, it's a pleasure. Here in your office here at Sidekicker.
Yeah.
How are you going?
I'm good. I did get back from Auckland last night pretty late, so it's been a tough start to the day. Still waking up a bit.
I appreciate you joining me here, mate. Being, alive and well on camera and on audio. So, mate, talk to us introduce yourself to the listeners and what it is that you do.
It's a hard one. Well, where do I start? So my name's Tom, obviously.
Yeah.
I grew up in Melbourne, and in 2012 I quit my job at Deloitte to start Sidekicker, which back then was a way to connect two people to do a task, and since then it's grown into Australia and New Zealand's largest platform for hiring, casual labour. So when a big stadium needs 50 people, they go on, make a request and hire, or when the likes of Uber need some admin staff, or, and recently we've pushed into the aged care sector. So, if they need to fill gaps in their roster, we help them. And our sort of philosophy is, how do we make this industry a bit better just through providing technology where a business can directly connect with their worker and both have control and transparency.
Dude, you say that so easily and so quick. I mean, what a journey. So take
it's been a while.
Yeah. Take us through the moment when, so it's been, probably 10 years since you've been.
Yeah, it's frightening.
Yeah.
It's frightening. It's been 10 years.
Yeah, wow. And so take us through the moment when you're at Deloitte and you were like, I gotta start this.
So I had the idea for quite a while before I got the courage. Sort of liked the idea of connecting two people. I actually read the Tim Ferriss book, The 4-Hour Workweek. I didn't finish it. I think I read the first sort of half and I was like, all right, cool, I got this. This is a bit different to, I had a pretty traditional, I guess, education path. And, when I was finishing at Monash, really the path that was pushed on you was like, big four accounting firms or consulting or banking, and you didn't really learn anything else. So reading that book suddenly just opened my eyes a little bit.
Can you remember the person who told you to read it?
I can't actually.
You just find it on.
I actually don't know how I found that. It's a good. I never thought of that.
Yeah.
I don't know, but anyway. So I had that. I had the sort of the concept of I'd love to pay someone to do something, and then I went to New Zealand for work and lived in Wellington. And one of the dudes there, Matt, him and his mates just started brewing beer in their house basically, and we went snowboarding and they brought some up and it was fantastic. And then the next thing they decided to launch a beer brand, Paradog Beer, and it went really, really well, and it happened really, really quickly. And I was like, hang on, if these guys can do it, maybe I can take a risk. And so I got back to Melbourne. The boss sort of said, what's going on? You seem a bit distracted. And I was like, yeah, I got this idea. And they were good enough to say, well, go away, take a year off and give it a crack. Obviously, they probably thought I'd come back. And that was 10 years ago. And, I think the first 4 years was pretty, I was only 25, so we didn't know what we're doing. We were, raising capital was harder than maybe TechCrunch made out. Back then in Australia too, like there wasn't the structure there is now.
Yep.
So for 4 years, we really just bootstrapped it, worked psychic jobs to pay ourselves, and and then in 15 or 16 we raised some money from Seek.
Yeah, fantastic.
So I feel when I hear 10 years, I'm like, God,
wow.
It's a little bit. Where's that time gone? I'm old. Yeah.
Yeah, wow. And so let's jump back. So the first 4 years bootstrapping, just putting all the money that you were making yourself into the business, and it's just the two of you at this point.
Yeah.
Those first 2 years, how did you go about selling the concept and how'd you go about getting people involved in the community?
So we did raise a little bit of money from friends and family.
Yeah.
But how we I think the thing with our idea was it was never there was always it's not like those ideas where you say and people are like, this sounds a bit strange. It was clear, oh yeah, of course I pay someone to do stuff.
Yeah, cool.
So we're able to just, if you had enough conversations, you'd be able to generate business. Now, there's difference between getting a small number of customers and being able to scale it. But a lot of it was just Jackie and I selling, basically. We didn't have any marketing budget or anything like that. We spent everything we could on getting the app and the website built. And then, our first really big material customer was probably Uber. And then they allowed us to get some scale into the platform, which then allowed us to raise money. But there was no shortcuts. It was we dropped off cupcakes in around Richmond. We did a lot of cold calling, door knocking.
Yep.
Got involved in the startup community in Melbourne and worked at a place called Inspire 9 back then, and that opened up some doors. But no, it was hand-to-hand combat for a while.
Hand-to-hand combat.
And it still is to an extent.
Yep. And so when you were younger, did you ever want to create a business like this?
I wouldn't say... Look, when I was in year 10, I was really just wanting to play sport.
Yep.
I really like golf, footy, cricket, soccer. So I never really thought about a career or anything. I thought, well, maybe if I could, have a job that paid me some money and allowed me to... I was never someone that grew up wanting to be a specific thing. If anything, I probably grew up wanting to dream of playing for St Kilda or playing professional golf or something. I just wasn't good enough at anything to do that. So it sort of was just like, all right, well, you're at school, year 11 and 12. I always had an interest in business, I'd say, in school, and was better at that than anything else. So went to that and then was lucky enough to get into Monash. So and then from there at 20, got offered a job at Deloitte. So I never really sat back and thought about my career at all.
Yep.
And it wasn't till maybe 3 years in that I started thinking about, corporate life maybe isn't for me and, what else is out there and, whatnot. I do get jealous of youngsters now coming out of uni and they've got a whole bunch more opportunities to work at different companies. And that's only in, I'm not that old. That's 17 years, 15 years later, how much has changed. And I think that's great.
So just on that, that's a good point. So you think that nowadays that instead of just the top 4 consulting firms, there's obviously a big pull for the startup community here in Melbourne, even scale ups as well. You reckon there's more awareness for that for grads?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah,
for sure.
cool.
The big 4 accounting firms just pumped a lot of money into the university societies. I was part of the Monash Commerce Society.
Okay, cool.
So I knew how much they paid us a bunch of money and we used that money to put on balls and have fun and get pissed basically. But they invested in that to impact the brand.
Yep.
But I think now there's more opportunities for people to do different things. I still think Australia has a long way to go in that regard. But it's definitely better now than it was in 2009.
Yep. Yeah, wow. And, mate, when it comes to, I suppose, your day-to-day being a CEO and co-founder, can you give us a snapshot of what that looks like? I know you're just in New Zealand, now you're doing an interview with myself. Can you give us a snapshot of what a classic, let's say, day looks like?
Well, it's different. And it's very different at different stages in the company and depending on what the biggest problems are. Right now, our biggest challenge is growth. We've come off 2 years where, COVID happened and you had really short labour markets. So when you're a marketplace that provides labour and there's a massive labour shortage, a lot of time and effort goes into operations. So whereas now it's cool, well, labour market's better, we need to get more customers because spend's dropped off. So right now I spend a lot of time working with our commercial teams on how we're going to do that. I flew to New Zealand on Tuesday, a couple of client meetings, into an event, one-on-ones with the different team members to see how they're going. Fly back last night at midnight, so I'm chatting to you. I think, though, what gets missed and people don't maybe understand is the more, people you look after or the more senior you get in business, if you're not having a very specific skill set, a lot of it is actually people issues. I spend a decent amount of time speaking with my leaders about their teams and what's going on from a people standpoint and stuff like that. So I think some people, when they want to be managers, they're not fully aware that most of the time being a manager, you are dealing with a lot of personality type things. So I'd say my day, though, is always pretty different. And that's what keeps me interested, might be having a chat with you doing a podcast, might be chatting with our product engineering team, might be chatting to the commercial team about how we're going to get more customers on. So I'd say the only thing is there's not really a typical day, and you've just got to be able to sort of ride with the punches and then make sure, though, you have an anchor point, which is where you're trying to get to in the long term.
Yeah, variety's the spice of life.
It is.
With work. I think that's a big thing that like a lot of young people say to me is like, I just don't want to be doing the same thing every day. And you raise a good point. Like, was there a stage where in your own career where you were like, okay, I'm technically I'm sales at the moment, now I'm marketing, now I'm the finance person, obviously wearing all those hats in the initial stage. Was there a time where you found it difficult to like let go of those roles, like when the company was building, and then focus on becoming more of that general leader? How can I inspire that kind of journey?
I definitely. I think, and not necessarily because I want to. There's some parts of the business that I have to still be quite close to that I would happily not do or be involved in. I think, I was chatting to Andrew Bassett. One advice he gave me is like, get really good at getting rid of the things that you don't like. So I was like, how have you done this for 20 something years? Like, I've done it for, we've been a proper company for only 5 or 6, and you get pretty burnt out and tired at times. I was like, how have you done this, AB? And, I think his advice has stuck with me, which is like, well, what gives you energy and what sucks energy, and get rid of the stuff that sucks it. So I think for me, it's more about trust. Like, you've got to, because I've worn all the hats, I do have a very, very deep understanding of all the different areas. And until you trust that someone can deliver to the expectations, you are a little bit, like, I'm someone that's not just able to handball something and say, I'm not going to even worry about it. Like, I will think about it. So I would say until I fully trust that someone's got it under control, I do struggle to let go a little bit.
Yeah, okay.
But once they have, I'm happy to not be anywhere near certain areas.
Yeah, cool.
And I think you just have to do that, because otherwise you just burn yourself out too much.
Yeah, and I suppose that builds the trust with that person anyway, because it's like they've got faith in me. Yeah, take the reins myself.
Yeah, and like, speaking candidly, like whenever we do sort of, I guess, reviews and you do the sort of 360 reviews on yourself, like there's always a bit of different feedback from my reports. Like some are like, yeah, lets me run and do whatever I want and all that, and then others are like, oh, he's like, he's quite close to me and wants to know, and that's just a function of like how long they've either been in the business or whether I think that area is performing at the level I would expect, or it should be performing. Yeah,
cool. Take us back to that moment when you started to explore those options with scaling, and how Seek got involved. Was it like a few meetings that happened out of the blue? Like, share us.
So we were
journey.
Getting. So I think I don't know. Like when I started, it was always, and now I'm a bit older and wiser. Like I questioned some of my thinking, but like back then it was just like, all right, we're trying to do a tech company. You got to raise money. Yeah, that's what everyone fucking does. So like, go and get money. So we were always, I guess, at the mindset that we wanted to raise, and we sort of did. First few things were through like angel investors and friends and family, and then in about 2000 and I can't remember exactly, late 15 or 16, we started to be of a size where we could probably do a Series A, and we're chatting to some VCs and whatnot, and then one day we noticed 2 people from Seek signing up to the product, and we were still at the size then when Jax and I would see every customer that signed up. And we're like, okay, what are they up to here? Like, when you got the head of strategy at Seek signing up, you're like, they're either sussing us out to copy or like, what's going on? So whatever it is, we saw them post a job. So Psyche gets connected. We call it Psyche and go, you're going to turn up. Don't make us look bad. And then I think once that worker had turned up, I can't remember if I called them or they called us, but basically ended up just having a meeting with them, and the process going through them versus going through, say, a VC was quite different. And the level of understanding they had of marketplaces was really strong. And I think what really tipped us over the edge to go with them was I'd been up to Sydney a few times. We'd pitched to this VC a few times, and we're sort of getting to the point where it's like, all right, cool. Well, like, how many more presentations can I do? Like, it's sort of, we're either going forward or we're not.
Yeah.
And I get off the plane, and I got on the 6 a.m. flight, so I'm fucking tired. Back then, like, us spending $250 for a flight was like a big deal. It was coming out of our pockets. We didn't have much money. And I get off the phone, and they call me, and they're like, oh, yeah, you ready to do another presentation? I'm like, I was just a bit, like, flat. And then we got a call from Seek saying, hey, we're happy to move to term sheets.
Yep.
So I call the guy back, and I'm like, hey, we're out. Can't be, like, it's done. Now, Tom today would say, use that as fucking leverage, play them off against each other, get a better valuation. But at the time, I didn't know all that stuff, and I was just, like, a bit tired of the process.
Yep.
So we said, nah, we're out. Jackson and I think mucked around in the morning, went to the Coogee Pavilion having beers, and we're sort of getting calls saying, hey, come in the office, I'll give you $1 million today, sign the numbers. But by then, we'd sort of just, you know, I didn't like that sort of way of doing things. You know, I was like, hey, well, just because there's a bit of FOMO, like if you just said, hey, let's have a conversation at that point, it probably would have gone differently. But yeah, like we just like that the Seek guys had always been pretty straight up, easy to deal with, and we got started. But, you know, Tom today, the advice I'd give is once you understand how the money markets work and you realise it's sort of like dating in a way where when it rains, it sort of pours. Like, I would say the advice would be I should have gone and taken that meeting and I should have played it off, and then that could have meant more optionality and stuff like that. So I'm not saying the way we handled it was right. It was just more, we're just tired of the process, and someone was willing to give us money and they've been great to dealing with, and we're like, done.
Was that your biggest hindsight moment so far in your journey? Understanding
investors?
Yeah.
It's probably the biggest gap I had, I'd say. I think for anyone who hasn't, there's a really, it's not great, but like on Netflix, there's this Spotify sort of TV series.
Oh, and it's on my list.
Yeah, this great scene where like they're sort of not going anywhere, and they're trying to. I think they were trying to raise capital or something, and one of the dudes who started it was quite a famous Swedish entrepreneur already, so he knew it, and he takes the two. It was really well formed, but it's like he's playing golf, but he's not playing with both of them. It's like day after or whatever, but the show puts it together in a way. Yeah, it's quite clever. But he starts going, oh yeah, Jenny's in. She's going to give us $100 million. Yeah, and. You know, and just creates that FOMO. And what happens is they end up both. He had nothing signed, but he played them both off each other, and I think they both come in as investors, and the valuation goes up. So there's just a little bit of knowing when you've got when to raise, when not to, when to create leverage and stuff like that. That I was just really, you know, at 27, green at. Yeah. But no, I've had lots, and there's been a whole bunch of other hindsight moments along the way. So I've made many mistakes. Yep. You know, I could say there's sometimes pushed on you this idea that, you got to go and get, you know, people that are better than you. You got to go and get these experienced people. Yeah. And there's not a guarantee that that's going to work. And I think a lot of times that can actually not have the right impact. You know, so you've got to sort of just be really confident in your own abilities and know when to hire certain roles and when not to, and just be a little bit, you know, back yourselves. Like sometimes if something's not working in a certain area, it's not necessarily because you're failing at it. It might just be you have, and it might not. It's not this idea of like you bring one person and they solve all your problems. That magic bullet sort of thing's just not there. So I think the capital thing, the hiring thing, are probably things I've learned along the way, and but lots of mistakes. Yeah.
No, that's really cool. I appreciate you sharing that. Like, from your perspective, where do you see the Australian labour market heading?
I think the labour market as a whole has been through a, 21-22 created a significant labour shortage off the back largely of immigration, I think. Yeah, okay. You know, without the inward immigration, it created a significant labour shortage in Australia. Yep. And also I think in a lot of corporate roles, there was also a shortage. Yep. And it meant wages got really inflated. Maybe people's expectations got inflated. I think for corporate workers, there's a bit of a reality check going on now. I think there's, you know, a lot of redundancies. I think wages are coming back down. They're at a level that was not sustainable, especially when you look at the productivity.
Yep.
You know, for the types of work we do, I think it's just normalizing back to what it was. Mm-hmm. You know, we're definitely seeing different things to what the government's reporting. You know, I think they're saying full employment, record low unemployment. We get something like 12,000 psychic registrations every month.
Yeah.
We're seeing application ratios. You know, so for every shift, we're seeing sort of like 3 or 4 psychics applying per shift. So I don't think the labour market's as tight as the government would believe.
Okay.
And even at the corporate level, we're finding it much, much easier now to access really good talent than we were 12 months ago.
Yep. Yeah, fantastic. What do you, like, being would you classify yourselves now as like as a successful scaled business, or are you still scaling? Or
no, I wouldn't say it, no. I think to be successful, I think as a business, you need to be profitable, and we're not.
Yeah.
You know, for me, you know, and some people might disagree that as long as you're growing. But, you know, I think I would like to, you know, the moment where I feel like we're probably successful is probably the moment where we're self-sustainable.
Yep.
So we're still in a mode where we're investing forward, we're investing in our product and tech, we're investing in, you know, launching new markets. So we're still very much in that growth phase, and trying to become a material business and trying to become a really, you know, sustainable business. So no, we've got a lot of work to go, and that's where, like, you know, I look back and I'm like, shit, 10 years, like, why haven't we achieved all this already?
Yeah, interesting.
But the journeys are, you know, unless you're one of those, I guess there's some very rare companies. You know, you look at what Canva's been able to do in such a short time, but they're you got to remember they're fucking rare. You know, there's
unicorns. That's why.
Yeah, and they're proper unicorns. I remember when we started, like, $1 billion was a unicorn, and that's because the multiples were a lot lower. Whereas now, with multiples going up, you know, if multiples go up 50%, then there's a whole bunch more companies that become worth that.
Yep.
But,
so when you mean multiples, like...
So revenue multiples.
Yeah,
so
okay,
if revenue multiples back in 13, 14 was, say, like, let's say 5, and now they're 10.
Yep.
You're going to get a whole bunch more companies that get valued at 100, that get valued at $1 billion, for example.
Yep.
So, you know, I think Canva's, like, in its own little special box.
Little spot. Yeah. That's an incredible company. From your perspective too, like, is there people you surround yourself with, or like, do you have mentors and teachers and people in your own network to be able to focus on your own development, and like, how do you go about doing that?
I've tried many a different thing.
Yep.
For me, there's probably the thing that's been the most successful. Like, I've done some exec coaching, which I probably am on the fence with.
Yep.
I've done, a range of different things, but probably what's had the biggest impact, I think, is, you know, finding people that have really been there and done that. You know, I think if people haven't done that, you know, and if you start getting into, like, some people that maybe are corporate educators or whatnot, for a better term, there's a big difference between trying to do what we do and working in, like, a big corporate. You know, like, some of the stuff I'm like, yeah, that's great, but, you know, and having people that have been there, who've scaled businesses, it has been the most impactful. So, you know, I won't call him out, but a guy I met recently, you know, probably 6 months ago, he's been invaluable. Like, also just helping instill confidence, you know, in me. Like, sometimes people, like, almost try and take away your powers at times and say, oh, you got to do all this stuff. Whereas he's very much like, hey, you know, you're a founder, you're a CEO, you got to, you know, man the fuck up a bit. You know, like, you got to make the call. You know, you got to be driving some of these things. Whereas sometimes exec coach might be, no, you got to sit back, you got to do all this stuff. I'm like, yeah, but we don't always have that time. So having people that have been there, done that's invaluable, and people that are just really passionate about the space. I've also been, you know, fortunate enough to be able to, not as much as I'd like, because he's a very busy man, but, like, being able to pick the brains of AB, you know, like, he's next level. You know, like, you sit in a room with smart people, and then there's, like, you realize that there's a level, and you know, he's definitely from a strategic standpoint, like on another plane. So I've been fortunate enough to be around that. But I think finding people that you have a personal connection with who have similar interests and have been there, done that, has definitely been the biggest thing for me. And people that know that being a founder and a CEO is quite a unique role, and people who understand that, I think have been the best. But like, I've had a lot of bad advice.
Yeah.
Like, I've got a lot of advice. I'm like, fuck, why did I?
So I take it your
that?
bullshit filter has been.
It's got
tested.
a lot better now. I also am a bit more careful with how I seek out advice.
Yeah.
But yeah, like when I was younger, I listened to lots of different things that proved to be a bit off.
Yeah.
And I think at the end of the day, like, everyone's got advice. You know, it's easy to give advice.
Yeah.
So it's really about, I think, finding those people that you respect, that you have similar values to, that you connect with, and then, you know, that have really done something that you're looking at to do. You know, it'd be like sometimes, you know, if you're an athlete or something, it's all well and good to get advice sometimes of people but if they've never been there and done that on the journey, like, the level they can give you is often not as strong. So, like, I look for people that have actually driven a scale up.
Yeah.
You know, that, and often on a much bigger scale than we have. How
do you find those people, mate? Because that's one thing
it's hard.
Yeah, I'm personally going through myself is like our business is a certain point and I'm going, I feel like I need to learn from someone in that space who's gone through what I'm going through.
Yeah.
And our business, as I'm sure you found this with yours, is that it's quite unique and you go, right, these people are pretty rare that have made this work and taken it to the level that perhaps you want to take it.
Yeah.
Is there any advice that you would give to people like myself and other people listening who are trying to find that type of figure?
It's hard.
Yep.
So, you know, I've been doing this for 10 years. I probably found a couple of people that I'd put in that bucket of true, you know, advisors / mentors. So it's really, first of all, it's really hard. That said, I've never been great at seeking it out either.
Yep.
So I think the first is you got to look at who are the people that have led companies or done stuff that you sort of are really impressed with. You know, like a company I've always admired is Xero. You know, I am by trade an accountant. You know, I was in Wellington in 2011 when Xero was getting started. I still regret not putting some money in back then when it was $2. And what they achieved has been, you know, amazing. So, you know, being able to pick the brains of Trent, who was, you know, at Xero early on and has been able to scale it is invaluable. So I think it's like people who've been there, done that in areas that sort of are similar to you.
Yep.
And most of the advice they're going to be able to give is not so much technical advice. It's probably going to be more about like that. Hey, all companies make mistakes hiring. Hey, all companies go through this. Hey, these are all the, and what it does is almost like take the pressure off you a bit. Because sometimes when you're trying to build and grow a company, like I said, you make mistakes, and sometimes you go, oh shit, like what's wrong with us? You know, what are we doing? And then you chat to other people and they're like, oh yeah, we did the same thing. And you're like, oh okay. So this is part of the journey. So I think it's definitely just looking for people that have achieved it or have given it a crack, really. And they've just have to have been through that journey. So I think, you know, one way is like if I was in your shoes, I'd be going, all right, well, what are the companies that, you know, I look up to that are local?
Yep.
Who are the people that were in the leadership position through that journey? Not now. It's very different.
Yep.
And I think you'll find that if you just reach out to people, they're actually really willing to help, because anyone who's been through a journey where you're trying to grow a company materially, they know how hard it is, and as such, they're willing to share some war stories and help people along. So I'd approach it like that, I think.
Yeah, good advice. The point you raised just before around being a founder, CEO, like, if you don't mind me asking, were there moments where you were like, okay, I've started this, maybe I'm not the the right person to lead on into the sunset, or has that been always your thing where you're like, nah, this is where I want to grow into? Like, has that ever been a thing?
It's a tough one. I think, look, I probably don't want to be a CEO of a big corporate type company. So I think at some point that will occur.
Yeah.
I think there's times that I wish I wasn't the CEO because it's hard.
Yeah.
And, you know, I look around and I think there's easier ways at times to exist and make money than being a CEO founder. But no, I think to now, like, I still feel like the job's not done. Mm-hmm. And until I feel we're in a really strong place and we've sort of achieved a few things, I think, my job's to sort of see that journey through. But I'm probably not the guy that's just going to be the CEO of Sidekicker for, and that's their jam. You know, like, I think we'll get to a point where I sort of want to do something new, like do different things. You know, I'm more suited to, I think, the growth phase rather than the operating phase.
Yeah, cool.
But who knows? Maybe that'll, I don't know. That's Tom today. Maybe Tom in the future goes, operating phase is easy. This is great. I just have a few meetings, do a couple of podcasts.
Play a few rounds of golf.
Yeah, whereas now it's like grind central.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah, interesting, man. Mate, I'm mindful of your time. One of the questions that we ask all of our guests is, this podcast was started with a dear friend of mine who's no longer around. And the way in which we honour him is we ask all of our guests, what are you roaring about?
Okay.
So we're going to play his little theme music first. Okay. So bear with us.
Taco. I'm roaring.
You call me Taco, I don't know. Just don't know why.
I'm brewing. I'm soaking it up.
Taco, just thought I'd drop in with a little late night surprise for you.
I'm not sure if you can hear the sizzling. I'm just sort of stewing on that.
Thoughts? I'm roaring.
So Danny would always say to our guests, he'd go, what are you roaring about? And what he was essentially saying is, what are you frothing on, or what's just getting you a real buzz at the moment? It doesn't have to be work. It doesn't have to be, something career related. It can be a book, a TV show. It can be, we've had one guest say nunchucks before, like learning nunchucks. So anything at all, mate. Anything?
That's
comes to mind.
It's a hard question. I think I'll go one work and one personal. I think.
Yeah, love it.
I think from a work perspective, it's probably rebuilding our growth engine.
Yeah.
2021, 22 was really hard. Like you're locked in your house. I don't have to tell any Victorian like how much life sucked for a couple of years there. So we're just coming out of like some pretty turbulent times and sort of just getting back into like, all right, like how are we going to scale this? What are we doing with the customers? Like that's probably, I guess, get me frothing again. Like it's just like, whereas 2021, 22 was a lot of like, oh fuck, we can't fill shifts. There's no Sidekicks. Like how are we just trying to get that? Whereas now it's a lot more like offensive, how are we building, how are we creating? So that's getting me fizzing. I never thought I'd admit this, and this is really fucking embarrassing. But like, we got a place down in White River, and somehow I've got really into gardening.
Hey!
And I'm frothing about this weekend. I'm going to go plant some things to the point where last night I was talking about the different type of lavender we're going to get to my mum. So I don't know what's happened to me. I don't know if that's a function of like you just hit your mid-30s, got a couple of kids under 3, but the idea of getting down there, planting some tree, like some stuff, maybe burning some things, chopping down a tree, that's got me fizzing for the weekend.
Nice, mate.
Which is, usually I would have said like trying to get my golf game going or surfing or something, but it's actually probably that. To the point we got some stairs built, so now I'm looking at like, how am I going to decorate around my stairs?
Yeah. What kind of... Are you going to do like a bit of like stonework with some lavender, or? I don't know.
I bought a few gardening books.
Cool.
So this has been a big, life-changing moment. I'm not sure quite what's happened to me. It's something I'm still coming to terms with and trying to deal with.
Oh, mate, thanks for sharing. That's beautiful. That's really cool. Well, mate, good luck this weekend in the gardening. Yeah. But thank you so much for spending time with us today on the show. Is there a way people can follow your updates and get involved with Sidekicker if they choose?
Yeah, I think I'm probably not too active on the socials, but I put a little stuff up on LinkedIn. And in terms of Sidekicker, if you're looking for flexible work, signing up to our website, we do have a lot of registrations and more registrations than we can handle. So please don't get angry at me if you can't find an interview slot or our screening team knock your application back. Don't blame me. And if you're looking for, just to get fill some gaps in your roster or getting some casual or temporary staff into the business, just sign up at sidekicker.com.au.
Perfect. Mate, thanks so much for coming on.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Cheers, buddy.
Cheers.